Hey guys, my name is Katie Rubin. I am a Divine Light energy healer, woo-woo indeed, a stand-up comedian, and an all-around sassy lady.
And I'm Cassidy Brown, actor, armchair philosopher, and a well-parented child of two therapists.
And together we have a podcast we think you're gonna like. We think you're gonna like it. It's called All the Answers. And in each episode of All the Answers, Cassidy and I basically just talk sass and be hilarious. And then after that, we do deep stuff. I do something called Opening the Akashic Records, where I get psychic, divinely delivered answers to questions. So you, the listener, can email us a question about your life, your past, your present, your future, something you want to heal, and I will open your Akashic Records and answer that question for you straight from the divine.
And you can send us those questions at allanswerspod@gmail.com. You can find our podcast anywhere you can find podcasts. Just search for All the Answers and figure out that it's this one.
New episodes every Saturday.
Nailed it.
What are you asking for? All of the answers? Say what? All of the answers? Yeah, all the answers.
Hello? 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 Hello?
If you can hear this, it's not too late. I've returned to warn you. This is Time Pop, a podcast that discusses time travel and pop culture. There are spoilers. I've seen the future, and nothing is sacred to these folks. Your past, present, and future are sure to be ruined. Even if you could go back in time, as I have, you will never forget what you are about to hear. You've been warned. This is Time Pop.
You ready to get into this?
Yeah.
Welcome, Chrononauts, as we guide you through the experience of time travel using pop culture as our frozen donkey wheel. We will be your constants. I am Des.
And I'm Ari.
And this is Time Pop.
Okay, wait a minute. Frozen donkey wheel?
The frozen donkey wheel.
Okay, I must have missed whatever that is.
You didn't see it. I watched a bunch of episodes and was reminded by it. So the frozen donkey wheel is the actual mechanism that allows the island to flash through time, we'll say. And it's literally I remember it like at the beginning of season, I don't know if it was 2 or 3. That was the only hint that the producers gave. They were like, give us a non-spoiler nugget. And they just said frozen donkey wheel. And in the finale of that episode, Ben goes to the bottom of the well and spins a frozen donkey wheel.
What does a frozen donkey wheel look like?
Well, a donkey wheel, can you imagine back in the good old days when you would see like a bunch of donkeys tied to a wheel walking in a circle to do it? And so this one is at the bottom of a frozen cave, which is why, and they never touch on it, but you have to put it together yourself. At some point on the island, you see a polar bear. And you're wondering what the heck this polar bear is doing on this island. And since it was frozen, they needed polar bears to spin the donkey wheel instead of killing all the donkeys.
Okay, so for our listeners out there, this is from a TV show called Lost.
Yes.
I personally have never seen a single episode of Lost. I think I saw a part of an episode that had something to do with a smoke monster.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the heck is this? No, thank you. That's like all I saw. I didn't see anything else.
Did you watch it with a friend or something, or did you just tune in one night and caught the smoke monster?
I was flipping through it or something, and there was like, the smoke monster's gonna get us.
Yeah.
Silly. So anyway, I know nothing about the show Lost. But even with knowing nothing, I felt like this episode was okay as a standalone.
This episode does work pretty well. I was very happy. I spent a lot of time, listeners, trying to figure out the 2 or 3 episodes Ari would have to watch to make sense of this. But this does, as a time travel experience, this episode does stand up pretty well.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of a lot of answers, but it gives some insight. And this, I know I've talked about this on other episodes, this show is why I have a podcast. It took 10 years, but this show is, I watched the hell out of this show. And because I loved it so much at the time, I couldn't get enough Lost. And so it sent me out on the internet searching for more Lost. And that's when I came across podcasts recapping the show. And so I started listening to those. And then because of that, I was like, oh, let's see what other podcasts are out there, and started listening and got into them, and slowly worked my way up to Ari and I's Time Pop.
Yay.
Yeah, this show is why I don't get into too many television shows. And it's not because the show is so good it ruined every other show for me. I just put so much time into this show that I now have this thing where it's like, well, I'm either gonna totally half-ass watch this show, or I'm gonna go full Lost on it. And I just don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
So for the last 3 seasons of Lost, my schedule would be, I would watch last week's episode, I would watch this week's episode, I would listen to 3 podcasts about it, and then repeat.
What?
Yes.
Really?
Because this show was on before streaming had fully taken over our lives, so in order to give you another crack at it, they would play last week's episode before this week's episode. And so, so I would watch it, listen to 3 podcasts about it, go, oh, I missed that. And then in the rewatch, be like, oh, now I get it.
Wow. That's hardcore.
Yeah, it was very hardcore. And I watched a little bit of the finale, because the finale is the only episode of the show I've only seen once, because I didn't watch it the following week to get my recap. And so the finale extravaganza of this show was last week's episode, a retrospective, and a 2-hour finale. So
it's a 2-hour finale. Wow.
Yeah. So which, 90 minutes without commercials. So it was like a 5-hour, like the 2 people I watched the entire series with didn't make it through the finale. Because 3 hours into that experience, they were just like, I don't care anymore.
Wow.
So long story short, I love Lost, and
wow.
I've been wanting to do a rewatch for a while, and I just, I don't have that kind of time. So this experience was really, really cool for me, because I dug up a bunch. I went on the internet and found a bunch of time travel episodes and just hopped in, because I'm always like, okay, where do I start? And if I start at the beginning, I've seen the first season so many times that I kind of end up losing interest, but if I jump into season 4, I'm like, wait, what happened? How did we get here? And so it was cool just to be guided by the internet, just be like, go watch these 10 episodes and don't worry about it. And
so there's 10 episodes in Lost about time travel?
There's definitely more, but there's 10 big ones.
So why did you choose this episode?
This episode, well, one, because The Constant has been in our intro since our first episode. And and this episode that we're going to recap is called The Constant. And this is the one, like, when I kept searching, this is the biggest failure of the internet I've ever seen. I couldn't just get a list of Lost time travel episodes. I thought that was so insane. And it must be because there's so many references that they were like, well, does this one count? Or do we only do it? I found a decent fandom article that it didn't just give a list, but it was a good article about the time travel heavy episodes. So I watched, I didn't quite get through all of them, but real quick. So I watched, let's see, episode 213, The Long Con, episode 38, Flashes Before Your Eyes, 4-9, The Shape of Things to Come, 413, There's No Place Like Home, Part 2, 5-1, Because You Left, 5-5, This Place is Death, 5-7, The Life and Death of Jeremy Bentham. I didn't quite finish that one. And then I didn't get to The Variable. And I started the finale. And those ones I was doing some other things as I watched. I took some notes. But then I watched The Constant just this morning.
Yeah.
So it'd be fresh in my memory. So I'm going to do a quick kind of time travel recap before we jump into this one.
About this episode or about other episodes?
About Lost in general.
Okay.
So real quick, so Lost is about a plane that crashes on an island. It rips in two parts, so half the people are on one side of the island, half the people are on the other. They're just trying to survive. And then they run into some people who live on the island. You know, they claim ownership of the island, so they don't want these hangers-ons being there. They start finding these, what do you call it? They look like military placements on the island. There's a bunch of different ones. They all look like they're set up for different experiments. And that's part of what we will come to find is the Dharma Initiative. And it's a group of people that, as near as we can tell, you can't just go to this island. And so, but these are people that actually managed to find the island. And so since they found it, they set up a bunch of experiment posts to try to solve the mystery of this island. And so through the show, the way the show is done is they do every episode would be about one main character. And so you would show them on the island, but then they would flash back to their life before the island. And so that's how we would get to know these characters before they landed on the island and what their motivations may be now that they are on the island. And then there's a season where you don't find out until the very end of that season that season you haven't been watching flashbacks. You've been watching flash forwards to their time after the island. And that's when you realize shit's getting really weird. And there have been some vague references up to this point about time travel, but it just seems like people trying to wrap their heads around this mystery. And then you realize that the people that you're flashing forward to that have gotten off the island now desperately want to get back to the island. And like I said, trying to get back to this island is near impossible. And, you know, through a lot of coincidences, and Ben, one of the main people that from the others that was already on the island when the plane crashed, he's the leader of them. He manages to get off the island. He's the one that spins the frozen donkey wheel and goes back off. Or no, that's a different time. Anyways, Ben ends up getting them all together to get them back on the island. And that's when they run into this woman, and she has this crazy, what looks like to be an experiment set up. And they're just like, how come we can't just go back to the island? How come you don't know where it is? And she says, it's not about where the island is. It's about when the island is.
Oh, cool.
And so thanks to her son, which we'll talk about in this episode, Faraday, she has devised a way to track the island and figure out when it is, therefore allowing them to jump to the island.
Well, there's a lot of time travel in the show.
There is a lot of time travel in the show. Strangely enough, the finale time travel doesn't really matter that much, but time travel figures into them just seeing how long of an experience this island is and how long of a mystery it is. This isn't a new thing that just popped up. This is something that has been there through all time, basically.
Mm.
And the smoke monster that you referenced, that's one of the two owners of the island. There's, of course, a light and a dark. There's a guy who always wears white and a guy who always wears black. At some point, the guy in white throws the man in black down a well, and is exposed to all of the island's energy at once, thus becoming the smoke monster. So, like, I read a recap of this show that was like 4 pages long. They didn't mention time travel once.
Wow.
Because it doesn't really figure into what the island really is. It just figures into how our main characters experience it. So, now that everyone's tuned out because they don't care about Lost, we're going to start my new favorite segment, this one time, Desmond's Overview!
Yay! I was hoping you would do this.
The Constant. Now, I'd like to say that my love of the main character of this episode has nothing to do with the fact that his name is Desmond.
I know, it was so great.
But that would be a lie.
Yeah. Such a great name.
This is like my first experience ever of having a Desmond in a show that, you know, hearing my name, like there's got to be people like named Scott and Steve, who every time they're watching TV, it's just like, oh, there's my name again.
Yeah.
And
no, I can relate to you. The only time you hear my name is in the movie The Little Mermaid, so I can relate.
Oh, there you go. Totally. So the constant, we start in a helicopter that is just flying out to God knows where. There's a few people in there arguing. Saeed and I can't remember the helicopter pilot's name are arguing about where the boat is. And he's like, just go to the boat. And the helicopter pilot's like, it's not that easy. I just need to follow the directions that Faraday gave me. And he said, it'll be there. And then, so Desmond, Saeed, and the helicopter pilot are the only people on here. They're out looking for the freighter. And then back on the island, they're arguing about where they are. They've been back. We've been on the helicopter for about 20 minutes. Back on the island, it's been a full day, and they haven't heard from anyone on the helicopter yet. And they're freaking out. And Faraday is like, time on the island isn't time, isn't your normal perception of time. The fact that it's been a day for us doesn't mean it's been a day for them. And of course, everyone is freaking out. And, he's just trying to calm their nerves. And he says, as long as the helicopter pilot follows my directions, they'll get there. We go back to the helicopter. Boom. There's the boat. Appears almost as if from nowhere. Desmond starts to freak out. And Saeed is trying to calm him down. Desmond's like, where the hell am I? What the hell am I doing here? Who the hell are you people? I don't know what's going on. They're trying to calm him down. Boom. We flash to Desmond back in the military, which we will find out is 1996, which I haven't mentioned yet, but on the island and the helicopter were in 2004. So Desmond's back in the military. He doesn't know how he got there. It's his consciousness from the future has gone to his consciousness in the past. None of his consciousness from the past is intact. It's just Desmond from 2004 is now in.
Is that what it was? Because when all of a sudden he's in the military, he was sleeping and he wakes up and he's like kind of confused. And then he said, I was having the most vivid dream. So is it his consciousness from the present going into the past? Or was it when he first wakes up, is it his past consciousness that was having a dream?
No. It was his future consciousness going into his past consciousness. I think you caught me. I think there is some things intact with him in 96, but
there's some things intact. Is that what you said?
Yeah, because I said there's none of his current memories are intact in 96.
Yeah, so that's my question. If his present consciousness went back, he would have the memory of his whole life, and he wouldn't be so confused about if it was a dream or not.
So the island is in a bubble, and the boat is on the edge of this bubble.
Okay.
And so as he gets close to the bubble, that's when his consciousness starts to separate. So his past self didn't dream the last 8 years. His past self started dreaming when Desmond got close to the edge of that bubble and started to become dislodged.
So was it his past self in the military or that had that moment in the helicopter, or was it his present self jumping back and then not remembering his time in the bubble?
His present self jumping back and not remembering his time in the bubble. Because the only thing he remembers in 96 is when the helicopter got close to the edge of the bubble. That's when his consciousness started to dislodge. So his present self jumps back to 96 and doesn't remember the past 8 years. Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Just his past self only became aware of this future existence when the helicopter got close to the edge of the bubble.
Because as I was watching this, I had it reversed. I had it that his past self was the one jumping back and forth.
Yeah, it's kind of, for a minute there, I thought they were constantly swapping.
Yeah.
But then you realize that he's becoming unconscious every time he flashes.
Yeah, I thought that too. I thought the very first jump, they were swapping. And then after that, I thought it was just his 96 self jumping back and forth, and that his present self was just like lost.
Yeah. The first flash is a little weird, but then I think it becomes fairly obvious when he starts passing out that his single consciousness is going back and forth. And the more it goes on, then it's just a single consciousness really jumping back and forth. And he's kind of aware of both.
Yeah.
But because, yeah, you're right. Because so also, when he gets close to the edge of the bubble, not only does his past self not remember his time on the island, but his present self doesn't know.
That's why I thought it was his past self, because when he gets on the boat and he's like freaking out, he's like, I don't know you, you're not my friend. He's like, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be in military camp or whatever it is. I just assumed that, that's just his past self jumping into the future. So of course he's not going to have any memory of the past 8 years. And then when he goes back into the military camp, it's just his past self who has now experienced these brief jumps into the future. That's how I took it, but if I'm wrong, let me know.
No, I think you're right. I think, but that slowly comes on.
Uh-huh.
I think the first jump is a full his future self again, and only the future self of him that's been close to the edge of this bubble. So like, his past self only has 10 to 20 minutes
Yeah.
of memory from his future self.
Yeah.
But then but his 96 self still has memories of the last 40 years.
Right.
But then that the memories of the future are a very small portion of time, so he can't really put it together. And then his future self has become kind of, I think even his future self has now kind of, I think the 8 years kind of disappear for a while.
Yeah.
I think is what happens is the time between the military and the time on the freighter the time on the freighter becomes the only part of the future that he can remember, so he can't figure out how he got there.
Okay.
Are you thoroughly confused?
Yes.
Good. I know. As I started to explain that, I realized, yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I really hadn't put that together, what part of his brain was actually becoming dislodged. And it is, yeah, it's because of being on the edge. And Desmond is a very special person. We'll get into it in a minute, what he survives to become the constant. So then we kind of start jumping. We're just kind of going back and forth. He jumps to the military. Every time he jumps to the military, he's confused because he's been blacked out for a while he's been in the future. And he keeps getting in trouble by his sergeant because he keeps blacking out. He finally, and then back on the boat, of course, he's freaking out. So they put him on this freighter. They put him in sick bay. So in the military, he's getting in trouble. Thankfully, he's got some leave coming. So, he doesn't get put in the stocks or anything like that. Everyone's pissed at him because they had to run extra laps. But thankfully, he's got some leave coming. Back on the boat, they throw him in sick bay. There's another man in sick bay strapped to a bed, and he quickly realizes that he and Desmond are experiencing the same time jumps. And so now the person on the bed feels vindicated that this is going to start happening to everybody. They manage to get a radio into sickbay. Saeed breaks into the sickbay with a radio. They use the radio to call back to the island where they can talk to Faraday. So this is all happened in 2004. They talk to Faraday of 2004. Faraday asks if Desmond has been recently exposed to radiation or electromagnetism. And he has. Desmond was exposed to a massive dose of electromagnetic radiation because Desmond's time on the island for the last 4 years, I think, has been in the hatch alone. He was not on the airplane. And I can't even remember how I think he just went sailing. He just decided, his life kind of falls apart. Oh, that's right. To impress his hopefully fiance's dad, he goes sailing to prove that he's a great man because his hopefully to be father-in-law loves boats. So he's like, I'm going to prove to him that I'm a great man. He goes out, gets lost in a storm, wakes up in this island. He might even just wake up in the hatch. I don't remember. I think he might even go to the hatch and there's a guy that's already there and just assumes that Desmond is his replacement and just kind of throws him in the hatch. So for, I think, 4 years, Desmond's job is to enter 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42 into a computer every 108 minutes.
Really?
Yes. This is his whole life, 24/7, living in this hatch. Every 108 minutes, an alarm will go off. He has to enter those numbers into the computer, press it, and he says if he doesn't, the world will end.
Wow. Okay. Sounds tedious.
So it's very tedious. and he never questions it. At one point, I forget what he's doing. I don't know if he's out on a walkabout or if he's just sleeping through it, but he misses entering the numbers. And so then he has to turn the failsafe key. And turning the failsafe key releases an extraordinary amount of electromagnetic radiation, which is what causes the airplane to crash on the island.
Yeah.
Ta-da! So yes, so Desmond has been exposed, and so Faraday says, so yeah, he just asked that question, and he's just like, I don't even think they say yes. We just know, like, yeah, this dude's been rocked with electromagnetic radiation. A doctor comes to the sick bay, talks to Des a little bit. We go back to the military. We go back to 2019. He calls his ex-fiance. She tells him, oh, does he call? Oh no, he gets this phone line doesn't exist anymore. Yes, that's when he gets he tries to call her just as any kind of connection. Back to 2004, they're still talking to Faraday back on the island. Faraday says, what year do you think it is? Desmond says 1996. Faraday says, go to Oxford, find me, tell me to set the device at 2.342 at 11 hertz. And Desmond's like, whatever. Boom. 1996. Desmond goes to Oxford, finds Faraday. Faraday doesn't believe him. Faraday is about ready to be disbarred from Oxford for being a whack job. And so when Desmond starts to talk to him, Faraday assumes that it's his colleagues playing a prank on him. Desmond says, set the device at 2.342 at 11 hertz. Faraday says, okay. And now we come to a bootstrap paradox.
Mm-hmm.
Because Desmond tells Faraday to set the device at 2.342 at 11 hertz. Faraday does. The experiment works. And now he writes that in his journal, the journal of which he is referencing in 2004 to tell Desmond. So when did the 2.342 first come about? We'll never know.
So his experiment works. He's able to send a rat into the future, like an hour, and then the rat is able to run that maze. But the time travel aspect of the island is kind of a natural phenomenon. It's not like the scientists' time travel device is what is making these people time travel in the edge of the bubble. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, it is similar because he's using some kind of electromagnetism on the rat to send its consciousness back in time. So as far as this, there are a couple different aspects of time travel in Lost. There's consciousness time travel, which Desmond experiences quite a bit. I'm not sure what other characters, if any, experience that. And that's probably due to his massive exposure. And then, so yeah, if you're on the bubble, it has a little bit of a different effect on you than if you're on the island. If you're on the island proper, then you're actually skipping through time.
Okay.
And
but it's not Faraday's invention.
It's not.
Okay.
Oh no, the island absolutely is not.
Okay, so that's my question.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, no.
Not like it's not like he went back in time and told him those numbers and then he was able to invent the time travel that is what caused him to originally time travel.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I think these settings are very specific to this experiment.
Okay.
So yeah, so what happens is, yeah, the rat, he flashes the rat runs the maze really quickly. Desmond says, what's the big deal? And Faraday says, I haven't taught the rat this maze yet. I'm going to teach her in an hour.
Right.
Des goes back to 2004 for a little while. I don't think much happens here during this jump. The biggest reason for this jump is when he comes back to 1996. Faraday asks him, how long were you gone? Desmond says 5 minutes, and he's been out for 75 minutes in 1996. So Faraday's kind of using those numbers to calculate something. We don't know, but he's like, okay, well, 5 equals 75, blah, 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 blah. Looks over, Eloise is dead. The rat.
Eloise is the rat.
The rat is dead. Desmond asks what happened. He says, I don't know, some kind of embolism. She couldn't handle it. There was nothing tethering her to both states and time.
Mm-hmm.
Eloise didn't have a constant. Back on the boat, the man George Minkowski, the man strapped to the bed, who is also experiencing time flashes, tells Desmond that before he was strapped to the bed, he was instructed not to answer the phone if a certain person calls. This certain person who was trying to call is Penny.
So that I didn't understand. They never came back to that. Why is Penny trying to call the boat?
Because her father is the one who sent this boat out there, which is something you don't learn in this episode.
Oh, okay.
At all. But he is behind this freighter being out there at all. Penny's father is a very powerful man. It's kind of confusing for a while what his role is, but he's just basically a rich asshole who, wants to find the most amazing of riches, and that is a mysterious island.
Got it.
So then, so Faraday tells Des says, so am I going to die like Eloise? And Faraday basically says, if you don't find an anchor, a constant in the past and present, then most likely. And Desmond realizes very quickly that Penny's going to have to be his constant. So he starts trying to figure out how then Des calls Penny. This is when when Des calls Penny in the phone booth, he reaches her, doesn't he?
In 96, he reaches her. Yeah, she says, you broke up with me and went into the military. I'm moving. Please don't ever contact me again.
Because then when he calls her a day later from Faraday's office, it's disconnected.
Yeah, because she moved.
So I guess in that one day she moved. I guess that was Desmond calling her was her the last straw.
Yeah.
For that. Yeah. Back on the boat, the sickbay door is mysteriously open. We don't find out for, I think, a full season who opened that door.
Oh, wow.
I think it's Michael that opens the door. Yay, Michael. So they go out, they're going to go so now he's like, holy crap, Penny's been trying to call the boat. I got to go try and call Penny. They find their way out. They go to the communications area, which everything has been ripped out. Someone on this boat doesn't want anyone communicating anymore. Saeed, who of course is from the military and is electronics genius, which a communications expert, which works to the show's advantage several times, manages to find a small battery and a communication device. And so is this when, trying to think if Desmond tries one quick call.
No, he just doesn't know the number.
Okay, he just has no idea what the number is right now in the future. He doesn't know who to call. So the jumps are starting to get faster. In 1996, he can't find Penny because, like we said, she's moved, but he manages to find her father. Her father gives him Penny's address so that Penny can tell him to go fuck himself. So yeah, something in one of the previous episodes, Desmond is confused. He goes to the woman who will eventually get them back to the island so I'm totally jumping out of this episode. Sorry everyone, but this is kind of important. So in like 94 or 95, something like maybe 93, Desmond decides he wants to marry Penny. He goes to buy a ring. There's a woman there selling him the ring. She is the woman who will eventually help them find out, quote unquote, when the island is. And Desmond says, all right, I'll buy the ring. And she says, no, that's not how this is supposed to work. You're supposed to question yourself. You're supposed to leave without the ring. And you're supposed to join the military. And you're going to go on to do great things. Trust me. And he's like, no, I want to buy this ring. And she's like, no, that's not how this happens. And he's like, what are you talking about? They go for a walk. She mentions some man out of they're like getting roasted nuts, and she points out like, those are some interesting red shoes. And Desmond's like, 5 minutes later, some scaffolding falls on this guy and kills him, and he realizes that she knew that he was going to die. And he's like, why didn't you tell him? Why didn't you save him? You knew he was going to die. And she's like, if it's not the scaffolding today, he gets hit by a bus tomorrow. If he doesn't get hit by a bus tomorrow, he dies in a plane crash the following day. Like, the world will correct itself. And Desmond, you are not going to marry Penny. You're going to join the military. You're going to do great things. You're going to end up on an island that is going to be the most important thing you've ever done in your life. So in the past, he kind of thinks like, well, this will be a great way to prove to to-be father-in-law that I'm a great man. But of course, these things are going to take years to transpire. So he realized a couple other things happen. He realizes that, okay, I'm not supposed to marry Penny. He breaks it off with her for what seems to be no reason. He just now knows that fate is running things. And so he breaks Penny's heart. And so now back into the constant, Desmond is talking to Penny's dad. And so he's like, well, Penny hates this guy now too. So I'm just going to let her tell him that he can F off. So he gives him Penny's address. 1996, Desmond goes to Penny's house. Back on the boat, Saeed has a working phone and no phone number. Back in the past, Desmond goes to Penny's house. Penny doesn't want to let him in. She's like, you left me. Screw off. Desmond says, I need your number. I'm going to call you in 8 years on Christmas Eve, Desmond McNeese's birthday.
Is it really?
It is.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Christmas Eve.
So great. I will not contact you until then. Just give me your number. I'll leave. You won't see me again. She gives him his number. He walks away. Back on the boat, he remembers the number. He gives it to Saeed. Saeed dials it. Penny picks up. Desmond McNeese starts to cry.
No.
Yes. Desmond, Penny's like, oh my God, you actually called me. And by now, Penny's kind of gotten wind of what her father's up to. So again, she knows about the freighter. She's slowly putting things together. She doesn't know what it means. But now that Desmond has contacted her exactly in the future when he said he would, she's like, oh my God, fate. And then you see Desmond in 96 walking away from the flat, and you can see by the look on his face that he is becoming untethered from the future, that the flashes are going to stop, that he's going to live. And also Desmond in the future is relaxing and realizing that he's found his constant, he's found his anchor, and everything is going to be okay. And then we show Faraday flipping through his journal on the island in 2004. There's a big note in his journal that says, if anything happens, Desmond is my constant.
So did that note just all of a sudden appear, or was it there the whole time?
I don't know. I think it appeared, but it also could have been something that it just didn't make sense until that moment.
Oh, okay. Because maybe he didn't know who Desmond was or what it meant. Okay.
Because that's a good question. Like, did Faraday's memory all of a sudden butterfly effect? So I think that's the first thing we need to get into here. How many bootstraps are in this, and how many butterfly effects are in this?
So as far as butterfly effects, meaning you change the past and then it ripples into the present and changes the present. So the only one that I can think of is if it wasn't written before in his journal, all of a sudden that it is written in his journal. But other than that, what other butterfly effects are there?
Well, I guess they don't really go into it, but I'm wondering, if Desmond from the future now remembers all this. Like, does Desmond of 2004 remember going to Penny's house and begging for her number in 96?
I mean, he would have to, right? I mean, that's how he got the number. That's how he.
But his consciousness traveled, though.
Right.
So that number could have leapt over 8 years, as well as surviving in his mind for 8 years.
His consciousness could have leapt. Is that what you said? Leapt over 8 years?
Yeah.
So if his consciousness jumped into 96 and made him do something different than he originally did, right? He didn't originally do this, supposedly.
Yeah.
Then his present self would remember. So I guess you could say, yes, that is a butterfly effect. It's rippling through and changing the present.
Well, because also, and again, I'm breaking out of this episode, which is cheating. If the woman who sold him the ring said, no, you don't buy the ring, that's not how this ends.
Then she knew all this was going to happen?
Well, she knew something was going to happen, but she thought that Desmond had second thoughts about buying the ring, and then went on a journey to find himself, which led to the island. But then in the present episode that I was watching, he is ready to just buy the ring and propose to Penny right then and there, and has to be redirected. But maybe that's how it always happened. because the fact that she was even there, like, I don't really think that we see much of her being a jeweler in the series. So the fact that she was in that right place at the right time, maybe that's where she always was, to give Desmond the push he needed to get out on that sailboat and crash on the island.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, Desmond ends up being, because of his strength of time travel, he ends up, I think, pretty almost being everyone's constant in a way, because of his strength of mind and his ability to after this episode. Because this is really early on, too. This is like the second time travel episode. And like the first two were just kind of like, huh. Like, you're still not even sure if they're definitely time traveling, or if we're flashing back to a time before the island. Like, this is the introduction to time travel in force for this show. Yeah, and I think the show was afraid to go too deep, because season 5 was the time travel season, and it's like episode 1, 3, 5, 7. And like, I watched those episodes in that order, and I didn't miss a beat. Like, everything that was like previously on Lost was just like, they didn't even talk about the episodes in between. So that leads me to believe that the in-between episodes were just like, all right, everyone take a break.
Yeah, totally. You gotta stretch it out.
Yeah. But I love the idea of a constant. It makes so much sense.
It's an interesting topic. Someone who, because I was talking about this after I watched the episode last night. A constant, is it still a constant or maybe it is a constant because it's there in the past, in the present, in the future. That's what makes something a constant or an anchor, is because that same thing, whether it ages or it doesn't age, is there in the past, present, and future. Is that what that means?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you didn't have that anchor or that constant, you could argue that maybe you don't know whether you are in the past, present, or future, besides obvious things around you, or where you belong, past, present, or future. Is that what would happen if you didn't have an anchor or you didn't have a constant?
Well, if the rat is any if what's true for the rat, then you have an emblem. Well, and Minkowski died too. Minkowski didn't have a constant.
So for this story, not having a constant, your brain kind of overloads and can't handle it, and then you die.
Yes.
Okay. So, but like, theoretically, let's say time travel was a thing and you're traveling to the past, to the future, you're jumping all around. Does not having a constant, is it confusing to you? Because I feel like, and we've seen many time travel stories where there is no mention of a constant. There, the story just doesn't have that, and everything is fine. And I know you love the idea of an anchor or a constant, but do you feel like if time travel were actually a thing, do you feel like you would have to have that?
I don't think you do if it's physical time travel. I think it's the mental time travel.
Okay.
Because otherwise, it's easy to think you're just going mad and having weird dreams.
Okay.
And becoming dislodged from the present.
Okay. So, yeah, I could see that. That makes sense. So when it's just consciousness, yeah, you don't know who you are, you don't know what's real. And so almost having a person that is also aging, I feel like would help. So let's say it's your mom and you're going into the past and your mom is younger, and then you're going to the present and your mom's a little bit older, and then going into the future and your mom is like really old. I feel like that would be a good anchor or a good constant, because your time frame is referenced by the age of that person.
Right. I think if you were time traveling with your constant, it wouldn't work.
Not with them, but they're there.
Right. But I'm saying, like, if Desmond and Penny were both caught in the same electromagnetic who's or what's it, and were both flashing back and forth, I don't think they would save each other. You need the Penny, like you said, that is aging and has reference of the last 8 years.
So if you were to have an anchor that wasn't a person, let's say it's an object or a place, how would having an anchor help you in that scenario when your consciousness is traveling, if your anchor looks the same, whether it's past, present, or future? How would that help you?
It could. I mean, if it wasn't aging at all, I don't think it could help you. But if it was, becoming worn down, like if you kept something in your pocket that was obviously getting aged and rusted and torn, that might work. But if somehow your constant is an inanimate object that never changes.
Okay. So the idea of an anchor for this kind of time travel is something that has to change with time.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, that makes sense to me. Absolutely. Having your anchor for mental time travel. Yeah, it's a really cool concept.
Well, and they don't really get into it, but the time traveler's wife, I feel like, is a good, like, I think I even said in that episode, I think whoever wrote that book watched this episode and was like, I'm going to stretch that out.
Yeah. So so the anchor in the time traveler's wife is the woman, the girl, and because she's so many different ages, he knows where he is and when he is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. I like that. That's an interesting concept. It's also interesting that it only applies to mental time travel, although in Time Traveler's Wife, he physically time travels.
No?
What?
Oh, yeah. Oh, shit. You're right. Never mind. That's right. But he always kind of body swaps. It's not, he doesn't, because they never go into it in that, but like when his older self comes back to his younger self, like is his older self just in a coma, or is his younger self moving that body around?
I've forgotten.
That's the movie I gotta write where because that's what I always, well, in this one, in Lost, you pass out, so you're not,
Yeah.
conscious swapping at all.
Yeah.
You're just being passed out. And yeah, and so on the island, when the island is, there's one particular episode where they're jumping all over the place. And it's because the frozen donkey wheel has been knocked off its axis. And so while it usually moves in kind of a way that can be tracked, like the Faraday's mom who's tracking it when it comes off of it. And one of the women in there, who I think we find out has been exposed to some electromagnetic. So in that instance, I don't think they needed a constant because it was their bodies jumping around. And they don't really say it. They don't say constant, but they are using markers to locate themselves in time. They're like, okay, the hatch isn't here, so it's at least pre-50s, and the camp isn't here, and stuff like that. But one woman does end up kind of, getting the whole bloody nose scenario. So there's definitely a toll that it takes on your body either way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you're mental traveling without a constant, you lose your anchor really fast. Can't really take it.
Cool stuff.
So there is really a question to ask about how you might use this time travel, because he's never able to use it purposefully.
Yeah, he has no control over it.
As soon as he quote unquote gains control over it, it stops.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, if the only way to time travel was, I guess I'll go off book a little bit. Only way to time travel was to basically put your present self in a coma and take your consciousness back or forward. Would that be something you'd be interested in?
No.
Yeah. I mean, if you could control it, maybe, because then you could like lay down and be like, okay, I'm going to go to 2030 for a while. Did Scott watch this with you?
Yeah.
Is this his first Lost ever?
No, he watched the whole show.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he saw it all.
And how was his rewatch of it? Was he like, oh, this is awesome? Or he's like, oh, this is so 2000 and late.
He didn't say anything in either direction about it.
I miss Lost.
He said he misses Lost.
Yay! Des and Scott Lost Cast coming back. We're doing it.
Yeah.
I thought about doing a rewatch, and then I realized there's like 8 Lost rewatch podcasts already out there. So
it's, how many seasons is the whole show?
6.
Okay.
And they're pretty short too, because this got wrapped up in the writers' strike.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a massive production for the time. Like nowadays, this is just what TV is. It's these huge set pieces, and
yeah,
it's bigger than any movie. So a lot of I think there's like an 8-episode season in there, a 10-episode season in there. It's like 120 episodes total. So as far as rewatches go, and this is I fell in love with this show when I knew I was in for good. Fans of the show out there will actually ask Scott, say Nikki and Paolo to Scott.
Nikki and Paolo to Scott. He's looking a little confused.
Okay. So most Lost fans remember the Nikki and Paolo episode as the day they either almost or definitely stopped watching Lost.
Oh, is that the one where it's like the two gods that are like using them as like
Something about two gods?
Oh, no. That was actually part of the show. This is the one about the jewelry heist that had less to do with the show than any other episode.
Jewelry heist that had less to do with it. He doesn't remember. So it's like a bad episode?
So the Nikki and Paolo episode is when you got scared that this show was going to go on forever. That they were going to have tons of filler episodes. You never saw, it's like mid-season 3, and Nikki and Paolo show up out of nowhere. You've never seen them, and all of a sudden they're the central characters of this episode. And they're the flashback, they're the main story, everything. And you're just like, no, this isn't why I'm here. And so the writers heard all of the complaints, and that's when they went to the ABC or whoever it was and said, look, we're going to do this show, but we're going to have our ending in sight now, and we're going to start building towards it. And we're not just going to go on forever until we run out of money and then get canceled.
Yeah.
And so it got very tight and very focused. Like, that's why I quit watching. It almost became X-Files 2 to me. Like, I loved X-Files until I realized X-Files was going to go on forever. And then I was like, well, I still like the show, but it's never going to end. So I'll just come back to it when I want. And, this show really got on track and was building towards something. So that's what got me really invested, is when I knew they had for the last 3 seasons, they knew what they were building towards. And the ending didn't ruin this show for me. The ending is a little underwhelming. I need to watch it again to really get it. But spoiler alert out there, the island is purgatory. And
yeah, I remember hearing a lot of people upset and a lot of controversy about the finale.
And it was a little underwhelming, but it didn't retroactively ruin the series for me like it did a lot of people.
Yeah.
I really, really, really enjoyed the journey of this show. And so, all right, everybody, I did it. 40 some episodes in, I finally did my Lost cast.
Woohoo.
So something I want to get back into doing, something I talk about doing all the time, and then for some reason I started backing off. We need to start telling the folks out there what to watch for the next episode, instead of, I don't know why it's taken me this long to realize how important that is, to not just surprise our listeners every 2 weeks. Because if they have 2 weeks to watch the next movie or show, then they might do it. And then they'll be more excited for the next episode and be ready to tune in, instead of like, oh, I haven't seen that movie in a while. Never mind. So this was obviously, well, you pushed me towards it because you're awesome and you knew that I wanted to do this. So you were the one that suggested this. But since this was a Des heavy episode, what does Ari want to watch next?
I have not even thought about it. Can you give me like a short list and I can pick one?
Thank you for listening to Time Pop, brought to you by Sounds Awesome. Please like and subscribe and tell a neighbor or friend about it so you can share a discussion of your own on the topic of this movie. Please check us out on social media. We are at What Sounds Awesome on Facebook and Instagram, and at Sounds Awesome 2 on Twitter. You can email us directly with questions and comments at wesoundawesome@gmail.com. We would love to read your thoughts aloud on air, and definitely let us know about a movie you would like featured on a future episode. We have an Apocalypse Now, where Scott, Callum, and Des talk about apocalypse-ish movies about society going through a difficult situation, not unlike the one we are currently living through. Want to check out some non-movie related podcasts? Check out All the Answers. You have questions? The Record Keepers have answers? Cassidy and Katie have sassy comments? Who are the Record Keepers? You'll have to listen to find out. And our newest addition to the Sounds Awesome family, Truth Not Trends. Liam Bauer and Jesse Schmidt have a combined 35 years of strength training, and they are here to keep you strong, fit, and motivated through these difficult times. Please visit our website at whatsoundsawesome.com to find all these fine podcasts, or just search Sounds Awesome in your podcaster of choice to find these fine shows. Please rate and review. And now, back to the exciting conclusion of this episode.
Yeah, let's do that one.
You want to do the Adjustment Bureau?
Yeah.
All right! Everybody out there, watch the Adjustment Bureau. Ari and I will do the same. Maybe Scott will be there. You never know. Background or foreground, he'll be near the podcast. We can guarantee that. Until then, check Scott out on Apocalypse Now, where we watch a different kind of movie. Ooh, speaking of a different kind of movie, if we ever want to do a good crossover, I've been watching The Umbrella Academy. That might work as a fun
Yeah,
crossover.
we could pick a good episode out of that. Have you been watching the second season?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would have to catch up on the first season, but Kelly watched the first season. She's like, oh, this is pretty cool. You should check it out. And then she watched like the first 2 episodes of the second season. She's like, we're watching this together.
It gets better.
I'm like,
Yeah.
all right. And yeah, we're like episode 6, I think, something like that.
Cool.
Thank you for listening to Time Pop. Until next time, I'm Desmond McNeese.
And I'm Ariel Gala. Bye.
Until next time. That was a Sounds Awesome production.